documentary compiled, produced, and edited by Don Dunn.
Channel 5 in New York. This is the 10 o'clock news.
Good evening. A major steam explosion tonight in the Gramercy Park neighborhood sent debris flying into the streets and, much worse, killed 2 people. One, a Con Ed worker who was on the job, and the other, apparently a bystander who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hundreds of other people had to be evacuated from the area. Pauline Liu was on the scene. She will be here in a little while to have a full report for you later on in the program. Steve? We told you tonight about a major explosion in Gramercy Park. Pauline Liu is just back from the scene and has the story.
High-pressure steam was shot hundreds of feet into the sky when a large steam pipe exploded here on 20th Street and 3rd Avenue shortly before 6:30 this evening. 2 people were killed at the scene of the blast and may have been Con Ed workers. Firefighters and emergency medical crews had their hands full, rescuing the many injured. The force of the explosion blew a crater in the street, and the steady column of steam blocked the only exit to this high-rise building, trapping dozens of people until help arrived.
That is live steam that can sizzle you. All of the people have been evacuated from the apartment house and on the other side where there are smaller buildings.
City officials are still trying to figure out what caused the spectacular explosion.
The Con Ed crew was working on an underground steam line at the time of the blast. The force of the explosion caused extensive damage to surrounding buildings and vehicles. Debris was scattered over 1 square block area.
I understand from Con Edison that they do not know the cause. They speculate that it may have been the release of an expansion joint on a 24-inch steam main, but they don't know yet. They have not been down there yet.
Pauline Liu, Fox News, Channel 5.
And Carol Jenkins.
Good evening. Carol has the night off. A thunderous blast in lower Manhattan tonight killed 2 people, sent hot steam towering 15 stories high, shattered windows and skyscrapers. There were early reports that others were injured and some people not accounted for. Buildings in the area were evacuated. Howard Thompson is on the scene. Howard?
Ralph, emergency crews here at this scene are preparing for a very long evening. This has been about as close as we've been able to get since this explosion occurred about 4.5 hours ago, and I must admit it was really quite a scene out here. It might be hard for me to translate this to the viewers, but there were shards of the street and debris from buildings littered on, scattered all over 3rd Avenue. As we indicated at the top, however, though, that 2 people are dead and there are several injuries. At 6:25 this evening, the intersection of 3rd Avenue and 20th Street resembled the bombed-out areas of Beirut. The noise was deafening, and the ground beneath our feet vibrated. It felt as if at any moment all of 3rd Avenue would erupt in one violent explosion. Con Ed crews, police, and firefighters knew this was a bad one. The media is usually allowed to go just about anywhere during an emergency, but this time the risk-takers of the New York Press Corps were told to stay back. According to the fire department, a Con Ed steam pipe located in the middle of 20th Street exploded, killing 2 people, 1 woman who was walking by and 1 Con Ed worker who authorities say was down in the hole. 16 others were injured. Cab driver Markeel Beltree was driving by when the explosion occurred. Debris rained down on his car.
What did it sound like? Oh, very loud explosions. I hit under the dashboard for about 5 minutes.
Local merchants couldn't believe what was happening.
I was working in a different restaurant over here, and all of a sudden I felt the building is moving. And too much noise coming from outside.
Police emergency service officers and firefighters donned blast suits. The steam was reportedly hot enough to burn off a man's skin.
The building was vibrating, and it was scary, but you have to just get the job done.
Authorities say a steam explosion is nothing like a fire at all. Shutting off the pipe is the major concern. But just what exactly happened isn't known yet.
On explosions, we have just checked with Con Edison. there's negligible danger of any additional explosions. They feel that the main that you're talking about, the gas main, is very secure. They're digging additional holes to check and be sure there's nothing happening, but they say negligible at this point of any additional explosion.
Joining me now is Emergency Services Officer George Toth, along with some of the other gentlemen. These were the first emergency services workers to arrive on the scene. George Toth, what did you see when you first came out here?
When we arrived on the scene, we just came from around the corner, and it was just like a deafening noise. You couldn't hear nothing at all. And there was bricks, debris flying all over the air. People were running all over the street. There was a taxi cab stopped in the middle of the street. The guy was jumping out of the cab. We got him back in the cab and got him out. And a crew from the other car that was on the scene with us, we got a ladder. There was people trapped in the building over here, right above Honey Tree there, on that there open window there. And we evacuated 6 people, 6 women and 1 male out of the building. And then we started chasing people out of the street, and then we went into the building again, and we started banging on doors and knocking doors in to make sure there was no other people trapped. And about a half an hour later, we had to evacuate an old 92-year-old woman from 5D. And we continue, and that's what we're continually doing now. We're knocking on doors to make sure there's nobody else in there unconscious or you know.
We had heard reports of a grisly report of one of the Con Ed workers who was seen walking out, his body charred on the street. Did you see or hear anything about that?
No, we didn't hear nothing at all on that. The first thing we seen was these people screaming out the window here. You know, because we couldn't get close enough because of the amount of steam was pouring and the deafening noise.
Okay.
And we got right in there. We got our ladder up there, got it up to the window, and we evacuated them because we figured that it was going to go into the building.
Okay, thank you very much, Officer George Toth. And the other men you see here are emergency service workers from the New York City Police Department. They were some of the first men, actually the first men, to arrive on the scene here around 6:25 this afternoon. Just one quick note, the Red Cross says it has opened up a shelter on the corner of 20th Street, actually between 20th and 2nd and 3rd Avenue, for the residents of these 4 apartment buildings in this area who have not been able to get back into their property. We'll have more tomorrow. Reporting live, Howard Thompson, News 4. Back to the studio.
The latest on the search for victims and for answers. Also,
I thought it was an earthquake, or I thought the building was collapsing next to us, or, you know, I had no idea. I was terrified.
An explosion of steam sets off a wave of fear and the wail of sirens in Manhattan. Good evening, I'm Jane Velez-Mitchell.
And I'm Reggie Harris. Here's what's happening. Tonight, the search for victims is over, but the search for answers continues after a massive steam explosion in Manhattan. At least 3 people were killed and 18 hurt when a steam line ruptured late today. Right now, Channel 2's Terry Anser is standing by live in Gramercy Park with the very latest on the deadly blast. Terry?
Well, Reggie, officials have not determined exactly what caused the explosion that devastated this lower Manhattan neighborhood shortly before 7 o'clock, filling the sky with flying bricks and deadly steam. 1 neighborhood resident and 2 Con Edison workers are dead. At least 19 people are injured. Now the steam is turned off, and officials say the immediate danger of explosions has passed. But those who witnessed the destruction earlier this evening say they will never forget it. Minutes after the explosion, witnesses said 3rd Avenue at 20th Street was like a war zone on a strange planet. Rescuers trekked across the debris, donning protective suits to shield themselves from the billowing cloud of deadly steam.
When we first pulled up, it was like a tornado of steam. The steam was blowing about 25 stories in the air, and there was bricks flying around, and you couldn't hear anything. And when we first got to the building, we had 2 people jump out of the windows. And we grabbed them and stopped them from getting injured. Okay?
With the hot steam complicating the rescue efforts, dozens of neighboring buildings were evacuated. A 23-year-old woman was found dead in her 3rd-floor apartment. Mayor Koch came to the scene, urging curiosity seekers to stay away.
And nobody can go into that steam because they would be scalded alive.
Among the injured, a cab driver who got caught in a shower of falling bricks.
I heard 2 or 3 explosions, and I saw bricks just come out and rain upon us. Stones just started falling on us. I didn't see much because I hid under the dashboard.
The most severely injured were the Con Edison workers who were in the neighborhood working on a 20-inch steam pipe that had been shut off earlier in the day because of a broken water main in the neighborhood. Out of the debris tonight, incredible stories of courage and survival. 1 Con Ed worker ran for cover into the mailroom of an apartment building where the door locked behind him. Severely burned, he was trapped, trying to claw his way out until rescuers finally found him 3 hours later. One of his co-workers was luckier. He managed to walk up to an ambulance and ask for help.
We quickly put him into the ambulance, began to assess his injuries and treat him, and he was burnt pretty badly from head to toe.
We were terrified. We ran down the fire escape, and it happens that the hole is right next to where the entrance of our building was. So
well, right now, most of the evacuated residents in the neighborhood are being allowed to return home. Again, officials say that now the steam is off and there is no danger of any further explosions tonight. But 2 buildings, the most severely damaged buildings, remain closed. Among them, the 210-unit apartment building at 32 Gramercy Place and a smaller building across the street at 151 East 20th. Now, the Red Cross is operating a shelter tonight at the police academy on 20th between 2nd and 3rd for anyone who needs a place to stay. Of course, the cleanup and the investigation are just getting underway tonight, and we will have more on this on Channel 2 News tomorrow. Reporting live from Gramercy.
And killed 2 people. At least 26 others were injured. A Consolidated Edison Company spokesman says that the explosion apparently occurred when underground pipes carrying steam to buildings broke. A geyser of superheated steam shot at least 15 stories into the air. It was 400 degrees hot. Con Edison workers are trying to isolate the cause of the explosion, which occurred on the same block where a water main break was reported yesterday morning.
20th Street and 3rd Avenue was a scene of incredible devastation after a high-pressure steam pipe exploded. 2 Con Ed employees who were working on that pipe were killed. A woman believed to have been looking out of her apartment window when that blast took place also was killed. And now the investigation and the cleanup begins. We have 2 reports on this accident, beginning with Tappy Phillips, who joins us live from the scene. Tappy?
Well, Tim, you can see behind me that Con Ed workers are now still repairing the damage from yesterday's explosion. They're also gathering evidence to try to find exactly why this happened. This steam main blew just about 24 hours ago, opening a gaping hole in 20th Street, spewing stones, steam, and mud all over the area. You could see what happened by looking at the gaping hole between the 2 24-inch steam pipes, but that was impossible to see last night with the geyser of scalding steam billowing 100 feet into the air, roaring like a huge jet engine. Con Ed had turned the steam off earlier yesterday while the city repaired a nearby water main. When they turned the steam back on, the pipe exploded. It blew at a stainless steel expansion joint, which joins the steel pipes carrying 350 to 400 degree steam pressurized to 150 pounds per square inch. There have been many incidents in the past where cracks have formed in the joints, but it is very rare for the entire joint to go like it did last night. Con Ed says it may be weeks before they find out why.
I think until we are able to do metallurgical tests on the part of the expansion joint that ruptured, we're not going to be able to know precisely what the cause was.
Some of these pipes have been underground since the 1880s. This expansion joint is probably only 10 to 15 years old. The steam system is under many Manhattan streets. It's used not only for heat in the winter, but also to drive some air conditioners in the summer. Is that outdated?
No, I think it's quite modern in many, many ways. You get a double use. It's a co-generated process. We make electricity out of the steam first, and then we send it out into the steam system. So it's a very efficient use of 2 services.
Besides those killed and injured yesterday, many people were left homeless. There were also many acts of heroism, not only by professional police and fire rescuers, there were also daring acts by everyday citizens.
Moments after the sky turned brown with mud and steam yesterday, the rescue effort along East 20th Street began.
It looked like brown smoke coming up. I really thought our building was falling. It was just like maybe a bomb had dropped, and it was just coming up. Everything was coming up. It was horrible.
A Con Edison worker and a woman walking her dog were killed by the blast. A 3rd worker died of severe burns early this morning, but not before he desperately tried to escape the giant cloud of steam by crawling into an alcove from mailboxes on the 1st floor of this apartment building. 24 people were reported injured as rescue efforts were hampered by the scalding heat. Emergency workers donned heat-resistant gear, while officials used ladders and cherry pickers to evacuate residents out of several nearby buildings.
It was just a terrifying thing, and it was really very comforting to see these service units. They were wonderful. I really want to thank them.
Although there were 3 fatalities and 24 reported injuries, the sheer force of the explosion left many surprised that there weren't more people hurt by the spending the night away from home yesterday, but most returned to what was left of their apartments by this afternoon, as the community began the process of healing its wounds. From the east side of Manhattan, David Navarro, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Workers are still hospitalized tonight. They have injuries suffered in yesterday's street explosion in Manhattan. One of those victims is in critical condition. 3 people were killed. Howard Thompson reports on efforts to find out what caused that accident.
The crater almost spans the width of Gramercy Park South. Con Ed crews working in shifts since late last night. The evidence of yesterday's explosion is everywhere. Windows are blown out and mud covers the walls of the 2 apartment buildings located directly in front of the blast site. Inside, the damage is extensive. Mud and broken glass cover most of the dwellings. The explosion claimed 3 lives, 30-year-old Joseph Malfatti and Stephen Walsh, both Con Edison workers burned to death by the 400-degree steam. 28-year-old Helen Sauer was also killed. Police say she was walking her dog when the explosion occurred. Today, tenants in the damaged buildings told their personal stories of escape and terror.
I have no apartment. It's totally devastated. Everything's ruined. Glass, mud, fragments of furniture. The windows blew out, the apartment went dark, everything blew up, and steam, boiling hot steam, gushed in throughout the apartment. Luckily, we were not too far from the door because within a minute we could not see. We groped our way to the door and managed to get down to the 2nd floor.
It kept on exploding, so I went out in my hallway, and a few other people were coming out of their rooms, and no one really knew what to do, but we were standing there, and it kept on exploding. I thought the building was collapsing.
2 shop owners told News 4 manhole covers on the street and their surrounding surfaces were unusually hot. Each owner says they had minor steam pipe ruptures in their establishments several weeks ago. As Con Edison workers try to restore the normalcy of this Manhattan neighborhood, officials are trying to determine what happened. Con Ed says yesterday a city water crew was repairing a leak. Con Ed had shut off its steam main. When they were in the process of turning it back on, that is when the explosion occurred.
Whether the water is going to end up being the definitive cause or not is just not determined yet, and it can't be determined precisely until you do some pretty sophisticated metallurgical testing.
Did it explode after the worker was turning the valve?
Hard to say. You see, what we're going to do is check the protocol, make sure everybody did what they were supposed to do, from Con Ed side, from the city side.
At this point, Con Ed officials say it's too early to tell if yesterday's explosion was caused by a technical malfunction or human error, even though some residents in this neighborhood say 20th Street was actually hot to the touch weeks prior to the explosion. But Con Ed says it cannot speculate if that is an indication there was a developing problem prior to yesterday's disaster.
Howard. Injuries suffered in yesterday's steam pipe explosion in Manhattan. The latest victim died overnight. Today, investigators began searching for an answer to the obvious question. What went wrong?
The accident turned the corner of 3rd Avenue and 20th Street into a geyser of mud and high-pressure steam. At 400 degrees Fahrenheit, it was hot enough to kill anyone in its way. And it did. A Con Ed worker and a woman walking her dog were killed at the scene. A second Con Ed employee died from burns overnight. Police donned special exposure suits to search for other victims. At least 18 people were injured, and firemen evacuated hundreds of residents from the corner apartment building by cherry picker and extension ladder. Today, the steam is gone, and the menacing hole in the ground looks more like a routine repair job. But reminders of the taste of hell are still everywhere. An entire wall of apartment windows blown out, parked cars that look like they'd been through a volcano. A Con Ed spokesman says investigators are zeroing in on the cause of the accident.
Earlier in the day, there had been a water main leak. The water main leak, when it was discovered, we shut down our steam main. The water main leak was corrected, and we were in the process of reopening our main when the explosion occurred.
Still, Con Ed says, while it knows the sequence of the events, it's uncertain of whether one caused the others.
What has to happen now is that some fairly sophisticated metallurgical tests have to be done on the piece of equipment that exploded, and really until you've done that, it would just be wrong to speculate.
You can see the dirt on the mirrors.
just see. This is my daughter. She went out there. Thanks for helping her. I helped her.
Blanche was not too happy.
There's fire hose down here. This is on the way down to the laundry room. And this is the laundry room. It's on the wall.
The street, right?
Yeah.
This faces the street.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, right here.
Oh boy. Oh my God.
Remember, I don't want to let you in there, so if you go to the window, the boss is going to see you. It's not going to
Serena?
What about the building?
Some of the people really just in Superior panicking. You know?
Yeah, well, we just jumped out a window. I was with two other
Especially the
young
people
people.
in the front.
Oh,